10 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Committee of the Whole meeting of Tuesday, November 5th, 2024. Just a reminder that this is a Committee of the Whole meeting and no decisions will be made here today. There will only be recommendations to go to your next regular council meeting on Tuesday, November 19th, 2024 for consideration. A couple of reminders for today's meeting. Members of the media may sit in the upper balcony at the reserved media table. All other guests, please take a seat in the first floor gallery. If that is full, there is an overflow seating on the second floor in the Victoria Room where you will be able to see and hear the meeting. We live stream the meeting on our YouTube channel, and the recording is available after the meeting. The meeting is also broadcast Live on your TV, Cogeco subscribers channel 10, HD channel 700, and rebroadcasted on Wednesday at 9 a.m. and on Saturday at noon. Because meetings are accessible to the public in all these ways, video or audio recording by members of the public is not permitted in council chambers. This is to ensure that all attendees and those who come to make a deputation feel at ease. Thank you for your cooperation. The meeting is this morning with several presentations, and then we have a timed appointment at 1 o'clock this afternoon for a public meeting on a bylaw for building. So we'll be taking a break when the presentations are finished this morning. Have some lunch, and we will come back for 1 o'clock. Moving on, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Richardson, Councillor Warren. All in favor? And that's passed. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest on anything on today's agenda? Seeing none, should any arise during the course of the meeting, advise the chair will deal with it accordingly. We have no correspondence for this morning, so we'll move right into presentations. And I think that this morning is all things economic development, and Ms. Rebecca Mustard is going to be our host for the morning. When you're ready, please go ahead.
Well, good morning. It's my pleasure to be here with you this morning to introduce the updated economic development strategy for 2025 to 2029. When we undertook this strategy and this process, we engaged with an economic development consulting firm called McSweeney & Associates, and today we have Ian Duff, who is with us and will be making a presentation to you this morning. So Ian is a regular instructor at the University of Waterloo's Economic Development Program and is the president of McSweeney & Associates. His main area of expertise lies in working with people to uncover their community's economic potential. As an expert in community economic development, he's facilitated and authored an extensive number of community, corporate, and economic development and industry-specific strategies for communities in all sizes all across Canada. With close to 30 years of hands-on experience in community, corporate, and economic development, Ian is passionate about helping communities achieve success and always looking for new ways to help drive positive community change. And so with that, I'll turn this presentation over to Ian, who's been a wonderful team member for us as we develop this strategy.
Thanks, Rebecca. I believe we have a presentation, correct?
That's correct.
If someone can put the presentation up on the screen.
It is, we can see it here in council chambers.
Perfect. I can see it now too, which is great. So thanks for that, Rebecca. If we can just back up just one slide, that'd be great. Thank you very much. So I'm not quite sure how to react to that introduction, but I appreciate it, Rebecca. It makes me feel kind of old. And I'll try to be youthful as I go through the presentation. We are here today to talk about the economic development strategy. This is a good news story. There's been a lot of work done within the community Rebecca and her team have been wonderful to deal with. They've challenged us the entire way, and we're very hands-on. And I want to really highlight that the success in developing any strategic document really lies in the input from the community that we're working with. And Rebecca and her team have been hands-on the whole way, and that's very appreciative, but it's also reflective as we go through the strategy with you. So next slide, please. So the purpose of the strategy, and it's very important to be grounded a little bit, it is about continuing to build on the strong economic development foundation that exists. This isn't a do-over. This isn't a start from scratch. There's a lot of things that are happening that have been wonderful in the community in terms of the economic development success, and it's really about building on what you currently have. It's also about attracting new and diverse types of businesses, while also looking at making sure that current businesses are attended to and helping them to expand and make sure that they want to stay in the community. And finally, it is about making sure that Kawartha Lakes continues to grow and is positively positioned so that as the community grows, the economy grows at the same time, which is a big deal. Next slide, please. So the strategy really is all about investment. It's about investing in Kawartha Lakes, full stop. But when we dig a little bit further, when we talk about investing, it is about the traditional markers. So, new businesses, new jobs, bringing dollars into the community, driving taxes, creation of infrastructure, all that stuff. That's definitely captured, and that's a highlight of the strategy. But we take it one step further, and there's a lot of aspects to the strategy that really focus on, building an overall community. So, driving community growth, investing in culture, investing in your tourism assets to make sure that you're looking at a very holistic view of economic development. It's also about supporting new people into the community, making sure you've got supports for young families that will help drive your workforce development. And it's also about making sure that you're balanced so that you have a diverse and a sustainable and resilient economy moving forward. Next slide, please. But the light bulb that went off as we were going through this, and we've had many great conversations with Rebecca and Lindsay as we developed not just the strategy, but the entire process to roll out the development of the strategy. One of the things that really came to surface was this is about getting people to become invested in Kawartha Lakes. Anyone that talks about investment and investing and driving those traditional sectors and making sure that it's about dollars and cents. If you step back, it's really about making sure that people want to become invested in the community. And one of the things that economic development really has to do is work on a lot of the qualitative stuff to make sure that people want to invest their time, their expertise, their passions, and their desire to make Kawartha Lakes that awesome community that will continue to drive investment. If you look at some of the cultural aspects, some of the artists that are there, some of the tourism aspects, this is very important, that you're working with people, and that those people want to become invested and to spend their money and become long-term, believers in Kawartha Lakes. And that's something new for some people to sort of wrap their heads around, but it's sort of an obvious thing that jumped out at us. And it was something that's made a home within the strategy. Next slide, please. So as you go through the implementation of the strategy, you'll know when you're successful when people are becoming invested in Kawartha Lakes. Your population is going to grow, but you want to make sure that there's businesses that are also growing at the same time, and that people realize that they can have a positive impact on the community by working there, by living there, by having a business there. It also means that your economy is going to grow around some key clusters: agriculture and food, manufacturing, tourism, your cultural industries, and also around innovation. So new ideas, things that are popping up. Those are the 5 main areas that you will see some growth, ideally. Next slide, please. You'll also know that you're being successful when Kawartha Lakes really is able to welcome new investment into the community. And that's not just about making sure that you've got the right attitude, but it also means that you have the right infrastructure, the right places, the right support programs, all those things that you need to really help drive investment into the community. And it is all about achieving that positive community growth, which is a big deal. Next slide, please. So great efforts were made in developing the strategy, and I want to point this out, that there is alignment with the corporate strategic plan. Sort of the two aspects that the Economic Development Division was very clear about when we went through this is that we have to stay focused. We have to make sure that the strategy stays focused on those things that are important within the corporation. So the healthy environment, quality of life, the growing economy, and good governance, those were 4 pillars that we continually looked at and made sure that the strategy aligned to. Next slide, please. As well as making sure that it aligned with the amazing team that's already there. So the Economic Development Division is already doing some great stuff within 3 main areas. So it's around, traditional sector and community economic development stuff, investment readiness, investment attraction, all that great stuff. It's around culture and it's around destination management. So again, as we went through the development of the strategy and through the whole process, we made sure that everything was aligned and that we didn't skew too far in the development of the strategy. Again, keeping in mind that this isn't a start from scratch, right? It's a continuation of all the great things that are already being done and the things that are happening. Next slide, please. So I'm going to quickly go through just really how did we get to this point today? What are the things that we did? How the process is really what we want to talk about. So next slide, please. So there was 4 main steps. The first step was really taking a look at what's going on in the community, what's documented already. So what are those strategic documents that are out there? What's happening, what's going on, what's already been papered, so that we know, or we had a good understanding of, what are some of the focal points, what are some of the areas that the city wants to focus on moving forward. We also looked at the city from an investment readiness standpoint, which really looks at things that talk about, if a business showed up or an investor showed up in the community, how ready is the city to work with that investor and capitalize on the investment. And out of all this, we put together a situational community analysis, which again is sort of a snapshot on the community. Next slide, please. So the second step really looks at consultation. And I do want to commend Rebecca, Lindsay, and the other members of the team. You connect us with the right people. So we went out and we had one-on-one interviews, we held focus groups, we got into the community and met with people and sat down and talked about some stuff and had an online survey. And we worked specifically with staff to find out, what's important, what are the things that keep popping up. And it's really our way to listen to what's going on. So by connecting us to the right people really helped us get that full image or that full view of what's going on in the community right now. Next slide, please. So in the third step, it's when we take everything from step 1 and step 2, so everything that's on paper, everything that we heard, so the qualitative and the quantitative, and sort of put it all together. So we came back into the community and held a workshop to sort of talk through the things that we had heard and then to really start with the action planning. And again, it was not just ourselves going in and telling the community what to do. The stakeholders and different members of the community came out from the business community and different investors that really shaped, some of the insights. Here's the things that really we need to consider moving forward. And again, I commend the ECDev division for connecting us with the right people. And I want to keep reinforcing that. It's about listening to the people that are in the community, that are there, working in the economy, working in the businesses that we connected with. And it was a very important aspect of the project. Next slide, please. And at the end of the day, we pulled it all together and put together the actual strategy document. And I do want to commend the ECDev division, Leah right through to Rebecca, Lindsay, and the rest of the team. It was truly a collaborative effort. And we pushed the team quite a bit in terms of having heart-to-heart conversations about what's real, what's not, what's doable, what's sort of too far out there. And many times the ECDev team pushed back and said, nope, this is what we need to do. This is where we need to go. So it was a very fruitful and productive conversation through the entire development of the strategy, which is a big deal. We say this to a lot of our clients. The best results are when you challenge us and we can push back and challenge you. And that's what this was. It was a back and forth to make sure that we got it right, and to make sure that Kawartha Lakes had a true stamp on the strategy. So this is a collaborative effort. This is something that has your staff's fingerprints all over it, which is a good thing. Next slide, please. All right, so I'm going to just quickly go through sort of some of the high-level important parts of the strategy. There's a bunch of actions that we're not going to talk about because they're down into the weeds, but I just want to give you a high level of the objectives that are the priorities throughout the strategy. Next slide, please. So there are 5 areas of focus, and again, the whole impetus of this strategy is really driving investment into and throughout the community. Next slide, please. So the first priority is really about, how do you drive investment into the community? What do you need to do to make sure that the Kawartha Lakes is investment ready and business friendly? So you need to know what businesses want and need, and also you need to know what investors want and need. And it's about making sure that you're able to work together to foster any type of investment opportunity that comes to the city, that you're ready to deal with it, and that you're all working together to make sure that that investment lands in the city. Next slide, please. The second priority is really about working with and looking at businesses. So the businesses that are currently there within the city, and also new businesses that are coming in. So working with startups, working with, helping businesses grow or change or evolve over time. It also makes sure that you're really focusing on the diversity of the city's economy. So you're not focusing on one sector, you're trying to focus on a bunch of different sectors at the same time to make sure that you're balanced. Next slide, please. So workforce. This priority really focuses on making sure that you are dealing with the people side of economic development. And this becomes a little challenging because it is so big and it means a lot to a lot of different people, but making sure that Kawartha Lakes has that sustainable workforce for the future is a big deal. And that's what this priority focuses on. It looks at not just your current needs, but also your future needs, and making sure that you are working towards ensuring that businesses can draw on that main resource that they need to operate, which is people. Next slide, please. So the fourth priority is really around ensuring that the city, as it grows, is still a place where people want to live and where businesses want to locate. It's all about quality of life and making sure that you are helping to build that quality of place that will drive people to want to invest and live in Kawartha Lakes, which really helps to ensure that you've got a strong economy because people are in the community. It also helps to shore up your workforce as well. And the next slide, please. And then the last strategic priority is really around supporting the Economic Development Division. It's about making sure that they have the tools that they need to work within the community and work within the corporation. It's about making sure that everyone's coordinated, and that the support moving forward. ECDev is a decent team. It's a fairly decent size, but there's a lot in the strategy that will require other people to assist within the corporation. And that's typical. That's, you can't do it alone. Economic development is a team game. And that's really what this is about. This is about making sure that everyone's working together to help drive that positive community change through your economy. And one more slide, please. So in the end, some things to think about. The strategy is community-based. It was driven, from input and from work with stakeholders and business owners within the community. It was a definite team effort to get to this point. And again, I commend the Economic Development Division for their work that they put into this. Because at the end of the day, what you have in front of you, the actions and the goals and the objectives, they are doable. They're realistic, and they're things that the team can do in the next 4 to 5 years. And I think that's it. If you go to the next slide, I think that's just me saying thank you. So thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. It was great. There are some projects that we take on where it's us sort of pulling everyone along, but this wasn't the case. It was a great opportunity for us to work in a community where it was a lot of positive input and positive feedback, which was wonderful. So thanks for that.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Perry, Councillor Ashmore. All in favor? That's passed. Rebecca, did you have anything you wish to add, or you're fine? Okay. So we'll move to 611, which is the Economic Development Strategy. Oh, are there questions? Sorry. Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, and thank you, Mr. Duff. I got 2 questions. And the first question is, what's the one thing we're doing super well above and beyond, say, other municipalities? And the second question is the opposite. What's the number one gap that we're, need to work on and we're falling, maybe work harder on?
That's a very, very good question. And I'm not a fan of comparators. So the way that you framed it, I think is wonderful. The one thing that you are doing very well, that we noticed, and your ECDEV division seems to get it. They all are working for a lot of the same common goals, which is a good thing. Some of the stuff, some of the lingo that's in the strategy, the concepts, like the concept about focusing on people as being an investor, it sounds super obvious, but no one's doing it. And as we went through the process with the Economic Development Division and had those conversations, they got it. They figured it out pretty quick, which is a good thing. We find in some communities that we work in, we spend a lot of our time educating and updating and sort of coaching. We didn't have to do that. So your team is very well versed, which is you're far ahead of the game with that already. I honestly, from a negative point or from somewhere where you're dropping the ball, I can't really. There's nothing that's jumping out at me. The conversations that we had with your local business community were positive. Everyone seems to get along, which is often not the case. I think that the challenge that you may have moving forward is just your geographical size. Where do you want to locate investments? Where's the best place for a business to go? I think that's probably going to be your challenge as you move forward, based on sort of the infrastructure, your locational criteria, all that kind of stuff. That's probably going to be your biggest challenge, but that's not a negative. That's just a challenge that you'll have to deal with going forward. But I can't really answer your second part. Sorry.
That's all right. Thank you very much.
Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, through you too, Mr. Duff, thanks for your presentation. And thanks to Economic Development for putting this together. I just had a question about, I know you mentioned you don't really like comparators, but a couple of, just this past term, we as a council dropped our commercial development charges to 0 for builds up to 27,000 square feet, which I believe and Economic Development could back me up there, that attracted businesses here, and that was a really positive thing that we did. Have you seen this happen in other, maybe we're unique, I think we're one of the only, if the only one in Ontario that has that, but have you found that that's, having these things really attract businesses here, and not only attract them here, but the ones that are here can expand? Thanks.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I don't really want to answer the question specifically, and I'll tell you why. And it's an excellent question. Again, that's another a very good question. But through you, Mr. Chair, each community is different, and your location, your level of infrastructure, the different business makeup that you have in the community really will help drive investment. So if you have other tools in place, whether it's tax increment financing, lessening of fees, that kind of stuff, what works in one community, it may not be needed in another. And so I applaud the city for making the tough decision to look at lowering different fees and rates to help drive investment. But over time, you may have to change that. You're taking a great first step for sure. But there's other communities out there that are doing just the opposite because it's worked, right? They've got investment coming in. They've got businesses that are locating there, and now they're looking at ways to fund their infrastructure. So I think the comment that I want to make is I tip my hat to you folks for being aggressive and for looking at ways to drive investment. And what works for Kawartha Lakes will work for Kawartha Lakes. And that's the part that you need to just be leery of as you go forward in looking around to see what else works elsewhere. Because every community is different. And the one thing you need to be very leery of when you're looking at different tools, whether they're financial or infrastructure for attracting investment, it really depends on the investor and the business that you're dealing with. Some businesses won't need those tools or those reductions, but you've clearly taken a risk, which is a big deal. So I applaud you folks for that.
Thank you. Just one more question. And we're blessed to be situated just north of the world's busiest highway. It's hard to believe it. We do have the world's busiest highway, Highway 401. Over 500,000 vehicles per day go by there. And do you think things like signage and just letting people know that we're here? I know economic development, they go out to the trade shows and they try and attract new business to the area. I know it's which is great. But even the Highway 407, we don't even have a sign there. We have to. That's not our fault. It's other governments that sometimes really need to cooperate with us and help us with signage and tell us, like, we're not Peterborough, like we're Kawartha Lakes, and take the 35 from the 115, like we're here. Like, is that really an important thing for you? I know it's important for me and everybody else here, but location and signage and visibility and letting people know that we're here and we're ready to help you. Is that something that you're really in favor of and support?
God forbid I say no. Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, you need to make sure that people know where you're located and what you're about. You need to tell your story. Right? You need to tell the Kawartha Lakes story. And there's a whole part of that. It's not just signage and whatnot. Location is a key factor of why investors will choose where they are. Sorry, why investors will choose where they want to invest. But it's also about building relationships and networks. Someone may not know where you're located. A sign would help. But if you knew someone who knew someone who was looking to invest and they talked about Kawartha Lakes, that also is a huge driver of getting people to look at the community. The obvious ones, yes, signage, your website, all that stuff is critical, but so is building the relationships and getting to know people within the investment world. And you're already doing it. It's just to continue building on that so that the investments flow.
Councillor Warren.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the presentation. I saw within the presentation, you took into account the strategic plan and the environmental pillar. And I was glad to see you had climate change within there. What other environmental issues or weavings would be in this plan? I hate to say weavings these days.
I think the through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. I think there's not an overall dedicated focus. There is making sure that, you know, when you look at your community development stuff, it is in a sustainable manner. When you're looking at quality of place, it is making sure that you're being conscious of what you're doing. I think that's the main thrust, but there's no, and I'm kind of looking over your shoulder at Rebecca a little bit. There's nothing really that jumps out at me that's very specifically environmentally focused. I think the one crux is, you know, you want to make sure that you're building the community for the future. So you don't want to, you know, you don't want to do anything that is going to put your environment in danger. And there's nothing in the strategy that would have, that I can recall any that would have a conflict with the environment. Rebecca, do you want anything you want to add to that, Rebecca? Because there's nothing that's jumping out at me.
Through you, Mayor. I would agree. So this is not a one of the 5 strategic priorities is not the environment. However, it is part of the corporate strategic plan, and it is sustainability is written sort of all the way through this strategy. So it would be a conversation topic as to how you would like to see the environmental piece brought out in this.
And Rebecca and I have talked, and previously we had a green hub with the college and Kawartha Conservation, and my feeling going through this is looking at, you know, the college has gone through a lot of changes lately, and if there's anything we can do to help bolster that relationship. And, you know, we have students, a student pool that could be used. I just like to look at a green hub again and what that would look like. So I put that out there. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. It's an awesome direction. We appreciate the work that's being done on this. Just one quick question when we're looking at the presentation today. It shows, and I like that you fleshed out realistic strategies. So we've got 5 strategies moving forward. Do we, from that step, we start develop that work plan to meet those 5 strategies? And why, from your observation, did these 5 strategies go to the top for the City of Kawartha Lakes?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor, is that a question for me or for Rebecca? I'm hoping me.
I think it's for you.
Yeah.
Perfect. So in the actual strategy, there's 49 actions. So what I went through with you today is sort of the high level directions, but there are 49 different actions. And the conversation that we had with Rebecca and her team, we spend a lot of time going through the specific actions. To make sure it was something that the city had control over, and more importantly, the ECDEV division had influence on. As you go through the process and you get the input from the community, there's a lot of great ideas that come out of there. But there's a lot of stuff that really you have no impact or involvement in. You have no impact on or involvement in. So they become more statements, if I can say that. And so we worked, I don't know how many days, with Rebecca and her team just to whittle down, I would say we probably had close to 200 ideas and actions. And so the ones that made it into the strategy are ones that either they're currently working on, so different initiatives, different actions that they're currently working on that are still important, or those other activities and actions that will really have the greatest impact in moving certain yardsticks forward. And that's really what the conversation was about as we worked through the strategy with Rebecca and her team. We wanted to stay deliberately focused so that it wasn't too big, I guess is the best word to use. And we wanted to make sure that it was in the capacity or the realm of what the city could do. And that's what you have in front of you.
Thank you for that honest and realistic answer, because that's what we need sitting around the table is when we're having a presentation like that, is it attainable? Is it, the plan that we need moving forward? So that definition that you just gave me, I appreciate the hard work that went behind it. So great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thanks for coming today. We've already received the Councillor Perry, did you?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one question, if I could. I'm not sure to whom this will be posed, but I'm just wondering about the section in the plan. Are we talking about the report, or are we able to discuss the actual plan?
We're going to do the report right after.
Okay. Because I have a question on the strategy itself. Would that wait until we discuss it? Yeah.
If it pertains to the presentation, ask the question. If it pertains to the report, when we get to the report.
Okay, I'll wait. Thank you.
Thanks. Seeing nobody else, we've already received the presentation and referred it to council. So thank you for coming today. We'll now move on and deal with the report. That report ED 2024-041 Economic Development Strategy 2025-2029 be received, and that the Economic Development Strategy as outlined in Appendix B to report ED 24041 be approved, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. I have a mover and seconder. Councillor Joyce, Councillor Richardson, questions? Councillor Perry?
Excuse me, thanks very much. I'm just want to commend you on all the work that's been done and gone into this report and all of the corresponding objectives and actions. That's great to see. I just had a question, if I could, regarding Objective 3, Strategic Priority 3, rather, on page 13, with regard to investing to foster a skilled, sustainable workforce. I mean, when looking through this, I mean, lots of great objectives have been identified. I'm just wondering how we position or frame, or perhaps it's done in your opinion, the corollary between having a workforce, a skilled workforce, but also job creation, right? Creating jobs where the skilled workers will actually be able to be employed. And I wonder if you just speak to that briefly in relation to the strategy. Thanks.
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor, it's a great question, something that needs to happen together. So there's a couple of things that we know today. There are more people working, more residents in Kawartha Lakes who have jobs than the jobs that are available in the community at the moment. We also know that there's a bit of a misalignment between the jobs that we have in the community and the people from this community who are in the labour market. So when we went through the consultations for this strategy, a lot of what we heard was a need for skilled workers for our businesses. That came out loud and clear. And then if you layer in on top of that, we've also got a growing population and growing employment targets. So there's a lot into that mix. So when we look at our workforce, in this Strategic Priority 3, we're really looking at how are we developing the workforce that is currently here and will be moving in, and the people, the new residents of this community that will form part of that workforce. And then when we look at strategic priority 2, when there's a real focus on the businesses, there's also a labor force in terms of job creation component to working with the businesses. So to split it up, we see job creation is what our business community does. Workforce is our residents who are in the workforce, and upskilling those folks to be able to come into and fill the jobs for our businesses. Does that answer your question?
It does partially. Thank you. It's just, again, I'd also note, and it's good to see that manufacturing is a key cluster recognized here in the strategic plan. I'm just wondering, and perhaps we can talk again before this comes back, if perhaps there could be a few more explicit links to job creation in the strategy. Okay, I understand and I appreciate the links you've made. Just wondering if there might be room for it to be perhaps a little more clear and intentional.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I've got a couple questions here, 2 or 3. One is the Development Concierge Program is limited in its ability to make a difference. Can you kind of explain that, kind of fill that out?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor, I believe that is written in the consultation notes that are as an appendix to the strategy. And they were part of the score analysis that McSweeney did, looking at the programs that we've got, those 13 background documents, and the engagement with the community. And one of the things that was heard was that the Development Concierge program is a good program. Its bones, its structure are in place, but we haven't quite figured out yet how to make it a really productive, successful program, but we're working on it. So it was identified as a challenge and as something to be working on.
Thank you. The film office launched in 2023. How's that doing? Just curious.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that office is doing very well. Donna Goodwin is in the audience today here, and she looks after that program for us. We put the film office in place because we noticed that there is an increasing number of inquiries from people that were wanting to film in Kawartha Lakes, and we did not have a single point of contact in the municipality for to channel all of their questions and all of their needs. So the film office does that. Council put in a film permit. Anybody that's wanting to film fills out a film permit. They go through all of the other municipal processes that are required through that film office, keeping that one point of contact. Last year we had 6 films come in, all using the film, applying and receiving a film permit. And so as a structure, it's growing really well, and we're looking to grow the number of films that are coming into the community. Because we have a firm foundation of a film office, we're in a good position to do that.
That's great to hear. Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Mr. Mayor, and thank you. Great presentation. So we've talked, but we are well situated. I guess this is on further to Councillor Perry's comments. How it gets fleshed out, but we are well situated with the college and the university innovation cluster to be a willing host for innovative businesses, and with a possible workforce through the college and the university. So whether or not that can be looked at going forward and as we flesh out the plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Rebecca, just wondering, just a quick question on the lands that we own in the city, Kawartha Lakes, and we have some vacant lands that are we still trying to prioritize that and attract economic development? We have one near Lindsay here on Highway 36 that's still been vacant for a couple of years. Do you get much response, or do you do cold calls and primarily to try and get business to muster up business to relocate to our municipality? Because we do have some land available. still. But we don't have an industrial park per se, but we do have some large areas of land that are serviced.
Through you, Madam Legislative Councillor, we regularly receive investment inquiry calls from businesses that are looking to locate. So our process is when we go out as a municipality, and up until this point in time, it has been very minimal because we have been putting the foundation in place to be able to go out. We go out typically through partners or through people who are connectors. So whether it's industrial commercial realtors or site selectors or organizations like Ontario East Economic Development or Invest Ontario, where their job is to go and source businesses, identify businesses that are interested in this area or in Ontario or in Canada. We position Kawartha Lakes through those. Ian earlier was talking about the importance of relationships. That's one of the really important relationships that going forward we're really interested in pursuing and fostering. So we don't typically go directly to a business to try and bring that business in because it's really difficult to know which businesses are interested in moving to Kawartha Lakes. However, when we go and work with our partners, that's what they do all day, every day, is identify businesses that are looking to relocate. So we use their expertise and we position Kawartha Lakes to them so that we can make those connections, and we regularly receive investment inquiries. We can't service, to be honest, a lot of those investment inquiries because we don't have the land that a lot of these businesses are looking for. So it is true we have land in industrial parks. We've got land that's zoned industrial, and for the most part of this conversation, we're talking about manufacturing. There's not a lot of land that is sitting shovel ready for a business just to move into. It's not a reality right now. There are some lots available and we work with whatever we can, but it needs to be a fit between the business and the property.
Thank you. So we have a mover and seconder for the motion. All in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for coming this morning. Moving on in the agenda, we'll now move to item 6.2, which is Phase 2 Cultural Center Feasibility Study Finding Presentation. Donna Goodwin, Economic Development Officer, Arts and Culture, and David Morrison, Chair, Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force, and Mitchell May, Associate at GIAMO. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Good morning. We're very excited to be here this morning. And the report before you, which the presentations will address, is related to the Phase 2 of the Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force and the study that's been done over the last year and a bit. So since 2015, the arts and culture community has been a real advocate in building a cultural facility or facilities to support the sector. In 2019, the Kawartha Lakes Arts Council and the Arts and Heritage Community Group came forward with $50,000 and asked Council to match. And that sort of kickstarted Council and the community's partnership, initiating Phase 1, which was completed in 2022. And then as of 2022, Phase 2 then was initiated. And during that time, there's been a lot of community development. There's been a lot of council feedback. The task force, of course, acting on behalf of council, has been shepherding this project. And so today, through GIAMO and Norda City and the contract that was extended to cover Phase 2, we have Mitchell May, who will be doing a presentation on the findings. And then after Mitchell is complete, David Morrison, who was chair of the task force for this leg of the project, they will be doing the connection between the actions of the task force and the results of the study.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Donna. As you heard, I'm Mitchell May from Jimo Architects, and today I'm presenting the final report that we developed with our partners Nordicity, who aren't here today. So to give you some context, the report reflects the research, data collection, analysis, and work by the very engaged, active, and passionate task force along with the city up until the end of September 2024. So what's included here is space programming, modeling in terms of the financial modeling, a governance structure, and those have undergone some revision based on that collaboration with the task force and the city and the community as well. So the site selection at this point has been completed, and there's a confidential process underway, and we'll talk about that a little bit more within the presentation, and the final reporting to be submitted in December 2024. So the key themes that were kind of the findings throughout this process were that there's a lot of enthusiasm for this project, a really strong sense of urgency, and there's a need for a community arts focused culture center to enable the innovation, collaboration, creation, growth, capacity building for the creative sector. A need for flexibility and adaptability in the design, and for a very focused program. And that was the program, which we'll talk about, was developed through a lot of collaboration, the feedback from the task force, interviews, which we'll see a little bit more about. There's also a growing artist community that is like within the arts and culture sector. And the Nordicity found that there's a total addressable market of 250,000 people for such a facility, including a mix of permanent and seasonal residents and tourists, so from the surrounding areas. And so the research and analysis undertaken included, it was pretty extensive, so 10 validation interviews, more than a dozen written feedback submissions that were received, meetings and working sessions with the Culture Center Task Force, comparative analysis of 14 Canadian cultural facilities. So that looked at things like the governance structure, operating model, the physical locations, user group brainstorming, market analysis, gap analysis of that market, the cultural center programming and facility survey, which was through the Jump In portal, a risk assessment, 2 collaborative task force and City of Kawartha Lakes working sessions, a policy and planning review, and that largely assisted with the location selection, and then a fundraising considerations review. And so in terms of the size and scope of the Culture Center, based on all of that analysis, this is the finalized programming mix and size. So there is still a range, of course, 46,450 square feet to 58,700 square feet. And that addresses sort of the larger and smaller ends of what is workable and what would be needed and wanted by the community. I won't go through the entire list, but some highlights is things like the shared exhibition space, which allows this center to function as a hub, which was always kind of a foundational principle, so that smaller cultural organizations who might be storing their artifacts and material at the archive are able to put it on display and allow this center to focus as a hub in the envisioned hub and spoke model, and let people know that there's so much more to culture in Kawartha Lakes. So get people out to some of the smaller centers around as well. In terms of the governance model, this was developed through a collaborative session with the task force and the city, in addition to a bunch of background research done by Nordicity. And so they looked at a few options. So a nonprofit option, and in green is the pros and in blue is the cons, and it's obviously small up there, but it's easier to read in the report. So nonprofit run option, a city run option, and then at the far right, a city and community hybrid. So sort of a split responsibility with a more of a partnership model. And there's many more pros to that that was kind of determined through that working process. And so, yeah, like a partnership between the municipality and an external community-led arts governance group is the sort of envisioned preferred model where it's a hybrid structure. In terms of the financial operating model, this reflects all of the new program that is proposed for the center. So you can see there's a sort of progression year 1 to year 5. If you look at the last line, which everyone's going to want to look at, the net income, it starts out with a very small deficit and grows in surplus as the facility becomes more efficient over time, understands its market, people know about it more, and it's able to become more cost effective. So that is pretty impressive for it to not be losing money in the first year. Like, I mean, there's a little bit, but and it's all predictions, but that is a good assumption based on all of the market research, comparable facilities, and similar sized communities. Within the report itself, there is a table 6A, which reflects a program that the city already does pay for, which is the archive. That's not shown on this chart. In terms of the next steps, an important one is the fundraising considerations. So within the report, there are a few steps laid out for how the Culture Center might move forward. And one of the most important components of that is starting a fundraising committee. So the steps to kind of do that is determining a clear and compelling vision for the cultural center, including an artistic vision for the space and programming, assess the fundraising landscape specific to the project, build out the capital campaign, and then develop a clear narrative of why this center is so important, what it's going to do for the community, and use that to get people engaged in this. Site selection, we broke it into two sort of broad groups. So on the left is the core site selection criteria. So that's determination of sizing and spatial requirements. That includes the programming areas that you saw on that chart. That's obviously an important one because we need to have a site that's big enough to accommodate all of that program. And part of that you'll see in the report is a chart that breaks out specific programs that need to be ground floor related for kind of construction efficiencies, the way they operate. And that helped to define a minimum benchmark size of the site. Determination of location suitability was mainly driven by the city's planning reports, such as the growth plan, like zoning documents, a bunch of documents that we've reviewed for that. And determination of proximity to partnerships was looking at the cultural infrastructure that already exists within Kawartha Lakes. And then on the right are the more, let's say, looser site selection criteria that aren't as driven by, is there water available? Are there organizations in close proximity? These are things that could help make the building an economic driver, but are more of more along the nice to have. So things like curb appeal, is it going to be an attractive building that's going to bring people here to see it just for the architecture? Does it sit within sort of a larger built up area that's going to attract people for that reason, that there's other things to do around it? Things like conservation and enhancement of cultural heritage resources, and a distinctive identity that represents Kawartha Lakes. With that in mind, because it's there's a number of sites listed, this represents the program area, and again, a bit easier to read in the report, but the diagram to the right shows all of the programs as sort of just boxes, And the diagram to the left shows how that relationship might work with the white sort of connective tissue kind of acting to bring people in, connect all of that, all of the programs together, serve as sort of like a public space that's going to bring people through it. So the diagram on the left is also reflective of the sort of the minimum site size and how large it needs to be to accommodate those ground floor programs. So in terms of the site selection, the way the process worked was a review of sites. So there was the development of the criteria, review of the City of Kawartha Lakes planning documentation, and then visual review of sites. From that, there were 12 sites that were long listed. So these were selected by us as well as suggested by others. All sites were evaluated against the criteria matrix, which is has been provided as a confidential document separately. So 3 sites of suitable size were selected as the kind of the best options. All of those were within the core of Lindsay and represent a range of possible options from new construction to adaptive reuse, with additions, of course, because there's no building that is readily available that can be reused for a facility of this size. And that's it. I think questions will be following David's presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to receive the, sorry, did you want, go ahead, Don. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Good morning. I only have about 45 minutes worth of material here, so. Good morning, Mr. Mayor and councillors, and thanks very much for the opportunity to bring this to you. Pardon me, before I start going through our terms of reference results, I would just like to take the opportunity before I lose it to thank Mitchell May and the people at JIMO and Nordicity for the work that they did. I don't think there was probably ever been a task force who have asked so much of a group of consulting people as we have. So thank you very much. And to city staff, very, very appreciative of the support, because there were a lot of people who helped. So all of that said, I'm very happy to present to you sort of how things were dealt with, looking at the 5 main action items in our task force mandate. And here we go. Action number 1. Oh, here you can see, you can see the actual 5 main actions that we were working on, starting at the top there. Share the results of phase 1 feasibility study. Secondly, to inform further site exploration and selection and feasibility analysis. And these are all things that you've just heard from Mitchell, of course, through their work. Number 3, to review refined operating resource and capital cost estimates. 4, inform a fundraising and financing strategy. And finally, receive and assess recommendations for the preferred operating model and site location. So in very general terms, that's what we were tasked with. So action number 1, as was listed there, share the results. These things, so that you know, did take place. Every First Nation in Treaty 20, Métis Ontario and Métis Nation, was contacted to discuss the work completed up until the start of phase 2 and asked if they had an interest in the project. Municipal Service Office, Eastern Region of Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, was given full complement of documents to keep them informed relating to phase 1 and the Green Municipal Fund application. The information from phase 1 was distributed to all community cultural partners. Community engagement was sought through postings on the Cultural Center Jump-In page, and information was shared with City of Kawartha Lakes senior management team, CAO, and the rest of the people listed there. So the first action item was taken care of in that way. Number 2 for us was to inform further site exploration. And this did take a fair amount of discussion, but it was sort of informed discussion of taking the information that we got from Mitchell and his people, and adding to that some experiences we were given. We had a chance to go and visit several other cultural centers around the province to see centers that were actually functioning. Some were quite different from what we would imagine having, but there are always bits and pieces and lessons to learn from seeing how other people have already done something that you're thinking of. So there was useful information came in that way. Other things that were important, and you'll see in the first bullet there, information shared by cultural and craft partners through workshops, interviews, and deputations. We did have groups within our community come forward. We had the Kawartha Art Gallery, the wood turners, quilters, rug hookers, hand weavers and spinners, all came in person and presented to us about how they would use a space if this was created, and what their needs are and how they're functioning right now within our community. And so that sort of helped us think about the spaces that are required and the usage of those spaces within a center like this. For instance, just things as basic as wet arts and dry arts and how they require very different spaces, and thank you very much, and the need for specific ventilation in certain kinds of working areas. So those kinds of things were brought to us and helped us inform our discussion. Through the Cultural Center program and facilities survey, a majority of respondents shared that a cultural center in Kawartha Lakes should be walkable or on public transit. So this was an important part when you heard Mitchell talk about the locations that they have sort of zoned in on. This is a very key piece of the information that helped with that. Task force members stressed that regardless of greenfield infill or adaptive reuse with extensions, the center needs to be designed in a way, and here's the important part, that is both functional and aesthetically pleasing. And for all of us around the table, those two things were weighed very, very strongly, and actually discussion about is functionality more important than aesthetics? And when it came down to it, there was some very strong feelings that both of those things have to be thought of very importantly in the creation of such a center. After all, if it is representing the culture of your community and artistic endeavors, those things have to be obvious to the public as they see it. So that was action 2. Our third action, there we go. Refine operating resource and capital cost estimates, because with all of the work that Mitchell and his folks did and the city folks did here, we were able to zoom in on a size, which you see there is 46,000 to 58,000 square feet. Once that was established, it sort of gave the opportunity for costs to be more focused. So you'll see here, pardon me, identification of municipal activities and partners through community and craft guilds help to model operating costs, staff, materials, equipment, overhead, and so on. All of those things were taken into account, and you'll see in the report that Mitchell gave you, there's quite a breakdown of all of those things. It was important for us at the table that the costs that come with the archive section of this project, which already exists in some ways because the archive exists, that those things were factored financially into the building of whatever kind of budgeting and structure is developed here. One thing that helped us as a task force to be informed about this part too was we did have the opportunity, Angela Fernelli took us for a little tour through the archive space that the city now has. So we're able to see the need that they have and exactly what it is that they do, which really gave context to us as people who have not been in an archive situation for the importance of what that is. We were also tasked with this: inform a fundraising and financing strategy. Pardon me. We were tasked with getting a better understanding of options to operate the building and partner with cultural sector to secure tenants, facilitators, partners, participants, and so on. And part of this information came to us through literally the deputations from community groups and what people around the table already knew from their community connections, and your jump-in survey that Donna Goodwin put out brought in all sorts of information about that too. So we have some idea of people who would use and what kinds of expenses they already have to take care of what they're doing if they were to move and become a partner here or whatever. Requirement for an environmental scan to start identifying partners and contributors to inform a capital campaign. So in the big picture of building something like this, where this money is going to come from and how it all fits together. Secured funding to identify the Green Municipal Fund feasibility study. That happened and is in place. So that part was taken care of by city staff. Inclusion of municipal staffing costs, here's what I was just speaking of a moment ago, and other direct operating expenses in the financial strategy so that we can have a clear picture of the full thing, not just, say, the arts and culture section of this particular project, but to make sure that we have a wholesome, a fulsome picture of the potential project. And finally, receive and assess recommendations for the preferred operating model. At the very beginning, CAO Taylor came and did a presentation for us, which was very useful as a new task force to sort of give us an understanding of how the city's procurement process works. Because for us, that was a piece of unknown information. But from that, we were able to understand how this part of the whole process works moving forward. So, pardon me, we did have some workshop sessions, and a special thank you to Brenda Stonehouse, who helped us through these workshops, which were very, very useful to us to have discussions that were free thinking and I think in the end very, very productive. We, pardon me, worked through the ideas here, 3 operating structures, and here you are: municipal build and operate, municipal with a nonprofit run, municipal build and operate and run, so complete municipal operation, and municipal community collaborative, resulting in the identification of a hybrid governance structure. And that's the one, I know it was very small in Mitchell's presentation, but when you see we had those 3 models and quite a bit of discussion about the pros and cons of all of those things. In the end, the hybrid governance structure definitely came forward as something that seemed to have a lot more positive aspects to it for a center like this. Now, that's a very unique thing, and as you look around the province, they're not easy to find. They do exist. We were provided with examples of other similar centers broader afield, like right across Canada, everything from the rooms in Newfoundland to a place in BC, and I forget what it was, but so that we could see how different communities have managed the operational side of these things. And knowing that the hybrid structure is likely the most useful one to us, it is clear to us that developing that hybrid structure would be a very, very important key piece of work for phase 3, if there's a phase 3. Okay. In tandem to the research and modeling associated with operations, finance, and programming, consultants assessed 12 sites. This is the part Mitchell was just talking about in the municipality, with 3 identified as being in the range of possible options. And that part, of course, is in your hands. So all of that said, those were sort of the things we were tasked with for this particular phase. And so coming out of that, the recommendations from the folks around our table were that definitely the city move ahead with a phase 3. There's great momentum already developed. This, as was mentioned, I think by Donna a moment ago, this whole sort of journey started back in 2015. So it's been chugging along, and it's moving quite strongly with your support right now. And I think phase 2, we were very successful in pulling together a lot of the bits and pieces that give a general shape to this. But phase 3, our recommendation is that phase 3 move forward as soon as is possible. We do understand that there's ongoing work in the background that city staff and consultants are doing that has to be sort of managed before a phase 3 task force or anything can be struck. But we do recommend that as soon as that work is wrapped up, a task force be struck as part of phase 3, and that the very specific nuts and bolts of a design and property acquisition and all of that is taken care of. And I think that is it. If there are any questions, or thank you.
Thank you. Let's get a motion to receive the presentation. Deputy Mayor McDonald, Councillor Warren, and any comments or questions? Councillor Warren.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. And thank you for the presentation. That was really interesting and exciting and many, many things. Just a couple questions. When you were deliberating on where you'd like to see the cultural center, did you look at, I know Bobcaygeon and Fenelon were shortlisted also, but both Bobcaygeon and Fenelon are tourist destinations. And so did you take that into account?
Good now? Okay. We did take that into account, and part of the reason that Fenelon Falls and Bobcaygeon didn't make it to the short list was because we had difficulty finding a site of sufficient size that wasn't within something like a floodplain, wouldn't mean sort of really large impacts to what makes it a great tourist destination. And so we were finding more sizable properties that were suitable within Lindsay.
So what actually is the size? Is it like so many acres, or?
So we based it on the what we called the minimum ground floor related programming, which was, I believe, 39,400 square feet approximately. I don't know what that translates to acres. Sorry, but it is quite a large site. There wasn't anything that was sort of within the cores of those communities that would kind of act the same way that we found potential for in Lindsay.
And just another question, and it's great that you got an FCM grant. I think that's wonderful to go net zero. Is there a time limit on that grant?
There it is. So March 2025 is when the work has to be completed by.
So that's just the plan, right?
Yes, yeah.
Gotcha.
So that would be showing on a site what a building, like the sort of schematic design of a building, what systems would have to be in place to get to net zero, and how it would all kind of have to work together in terms, like look at an energy model to determine how it's achievable, what improvements need to be made to the design. Yeah. Sorry?
They're going to be very busy.
Yes, we are.
Yeah. I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Councillor Perry.
Thanks very much, and thanks for the presentation. Just a question about phase 3, because that's kind of what we're being asked to proceed to today. I know it's listed there, the acquisition of property, design, build, those kinds of things. And then the bullet list what is included in phase 3. Do you have a little more detail of what is included in phase 3, and how much of that progress links to your fundraising goals and attaining those fundraising goals? Thanks.
You can tell it's been a very collaborative effort through you, Mayor, to the councillor. Phase 3 is sort of structured in getting the actual details, the actual composition of the building, the actual pricing, the site selection. We are really hoping and encouraging that we have a collaborative process with the college, with our Indigenous partners, with people, and they come together and they start talking about that design, they start talking about that aesthetic and also function. There's also other programs and projects that are happening kind of parallel. So whether it's there's a program that Emily Turner's working on right now with different types of, I don't know, archaeological, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for. So repository for that, and being able to sort of support and pull in other programs that might help at the beginning stages, while then they get their feet and they get on their the sort of background behind them. So phase 3 is actual, to use a sort of a phrase, sort of that boots on the ground. So then everything is set for phase 4, which would be the shovel. If that helps.
It does, thank you. And I know it says acquisition of property, right? Okay, because in the report it says site selection. It sounds like the site has already been selected. So phase 3 would move forward with acquiring the property, is that correct?
Yeah, through you to the mayor. There's been 3 that have been shortlisted. And so, of course, that goes in a completely different sort of parallel process to this, sure, with land management and such. And hopefully we will get a site. Phase 1 was looking at all of the municipal locations, and that it came back negative that we didn't have one that we already owned. So that was why phase 2, it went out to the community, and 3 have been identified. And hopefully with phase 3, 1 will be secured and we'll be off to the races.
Great, thanks. And just about with the fundraising piece, just how much of the work in phase 3 is contingent upon fundraising? I remember a few years ago when this first started, the initial grant funding was held by the Community Foundation until such time as it was ready to be allocated and spent. So I'm just wondering the cost here and how much of it is dependent on raising sufficient funds.
Through the mayor to councillor, one of the great things about getting the FCM grant is depending on the feasibility results of that, it puts us in the queue for capital dollars for that federal program. And from what we've been told by federal staff, you actually can't access capital dollars without having had that feasibility step first. So part of that fundraising and part of the work that's going to happen in this sort of interim between phase 2 and phase 3 will really help inform that fundraising, because we will already be in the queue for federal if we are found to be net zero.
Okay, great. So phase 3 really is grant dependent.
Yeah. Some of it's grant. I think that the partnerships that have been developed through phase 2 with the guilds, with some of the other cultural community groups that already exist, we've been talking about that as well and pooling resources. Some of the guilds actually have their meeting outside at the park, in the train park,
summer, winter, spring, fall. And so they're really keen to be able to, whether it's sweat equity, whether it's fundraising, whether it's, pulling their own resources together, but somehow participating in this. And that's why that hybrid governance model is so great, because it truly is that partnership of people coming together to build and then to operate.
Thanks so much. I really want to thank the Cultural Center Feasibility Study Task Force, David, Christina, Patrick, Tim, Lisa, and Lori for the work that they've done as well to represent the community interests. So thanks very much. Tracy, were you the counselor on that? Okay, fine. I guess Counselor Richardson. Yeah, thanks. Way to go, Tracy.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, my first question is to Mr. May. On your operating slide there, I just, actually I gotta scroll to that page here. I was struggling there with some numbers. Two questions on that. The rental revenue that you projected, is that, where did you get that information? Is that from other, did you get that information from other cultural centers in their startup? Is that your baseline?
Yes. So as I mentioned, Nordicity did quite a bit of review of comparable cultural centers. So this was kind of a back and forth exercise where you develop sort of a facility that is able to accommodate the rental revenue, to accommodate the people who want to rent to generate the revenue. So like it's an important facility part of that. Things like there's spaces that can host things like conventions. There's guilds using
That's okay. I
space,
just want to
things
know
like
where
that.
you got the data from, and it's from other startups as a baseline. That's
Exactly.
great. That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you. The other one is under expenses, building administrative staff, $100,000. That doesn't reflect, in my opinion, reality. What am I missing here? Because the other cultural centers have staff of 10 to 12 people. This is
sort of a vision at the beginning of the center. It would not be like there wouldn't be, for example, people running each of the separate departments. This model is reliant on the guilds at the early stages to do some of that administration for sort of the smaller components. Like the center itself is run by city staff, but individual components such as, let's say, a pottery shop would be run by the guild at this point. And then as revenue sort of allows and the growth of the programs allow, the idea would be that the city may hire those people to run them as a core component of the center.
okay. Thank you. I think the expense side of the equation here needs some work, to be honest with you. As an aside, I think it's great work on the focus of the space, your research on the space needs. I thought that was excellent. My other question, and this may not be for yourself, the overall capital cost, estimates informed by Altus 2024 Canadian Cost Guide. We're building a paramedic headquarters, and that estimate per square foot, it dovetails neatly there. But here's the thing. The paramedic headquarters is not going to win any architectural awards, and nor should it. It's a headquarters for ambulances and a big garage to house them. But this building has to be aesthetically pleasing, inclusive, and inspiring to visitors. And that tells me it's got to be an architectural gem. And that is going to be a higher architectural cost and building cost. And I'm just wondering if that's really been factored in. And it may not be a fair question to yourself. I'm not sure who that should be directed to.
I think that is me. We did base it on, I'll give you a little bit of background. So if you're looking at a blended rate, once you look at that, the capital cost. So something like the archive, it does have quite a bit more in terms of mechanical requirements, to maintain like certain temperatures and humidities for materials, but it's not something that is necessarily architecturally like it's not doesn't require the same level of architectural expression that the rest of the cultural center does. So it's a bit of a blended rate. There's some areas where it's a little bit lower, like we kind of got into a little bit of detail there. I don't want to say too much detail, but we looked at the cost guide for the different components and tried to apply it across those. So an archive, more typically, because you don't actually want light access, you're going with something like just a wall, and that's a sizable component of the facility. So that might be one explanation for why the cost is a little lower than you're expecting. I also don't design EMS stations, so I can't comment on how those costs compare.
No, that's fair. Thank you. My last question is. We saw, and I can't remember what it is, data on economic driver, people visiting from outside of Kawartha Lakes. But the metric I'm looking for is, and I think we need this to help support the reason, another reason, key reason to build this is these people coming from outside of Kawartha Lakes, when they come visit, how much money are they going to drop locally when they do visit? I'm looking for that metric. Maybe that's in the next phase, or?
I think that would be a future phase. It is, I think, a little bit difficult to quantify exactly how much someone or those people might spend. Nordicity did find that there was quite a large addressable market because of the location of the center and the population surrounding it. So they found about 250,000 people as an addressable market. I know that doesn't answer your question, but at least it's large.
Well, I would encourage the team to try to come up with a range there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richards.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor. If there's no other questions, maybe I can just do a quick sum up as the council rep on that. Does that work for you? Okay. Oh, sorry, Councillor Warren has more.
I wasn't going to forget you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and just a final question. I see the community consultation participants, and it's great that you've got the Mishkadeh Center for Indigenous Knowledge. I was just wondering if also Curve Lake was involved.
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor. Jack Hogarth, who was the curator at the Cultural Centre at Curve Lake, we have been speaking with him probably since 2015. He's now, of course, gone on to Trent, but we certainly have tapped into Leisha, the manager with economic development, and Mindy, and we've been working to provide information, to sort of have that feedback loop, and also to try to build that relationship so that they are able to sort of push through for phase 3 as well. When we actually start looking at site selection, we start looking at design and things like that. So Curve Lake's been involved, and we also did send out letters with the phase 1 report, with phase 2 the interim report, and also some of the communications that we have been doing, talking about the jump-in survey, things like that. We had sent that out to all of the nations in Treaty 20, and then Métis Ontario and also Métis Nation, and asked for intention for participation or feedback or comments, and sort of how they could see themselves working with us in the process. Some deferred to Curve Lake, some actively said, yes, we'd love to be involved. So that's starting to happen as well.
No, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I do want to thank our task force immensely, because it was an absolutely amazing group of people that we got to work with that brought some experiences, accomplishments, some amazing ideas to the table. We really got to hash out, of course, to our consultants and to all of our staff. We really did work well as a team. And even council today, the questions that you've asked around the table, it shows how engaged we are about this project. And it is an exciting project. You know, it was in 2020 that we actually adopted the cultural master plan, and then when we did phase one, it was that whole, you know, concerning the need to the community. Well, we recognized that there was a need. It was loud and it was clear, so we moved into this phase two. And this phase two really allowed us to flesh out what does the community need. And I think hearing the presentation today, we did hear those buckets that need to be addressed when we do get to that next phase three, which will be that design. Also, just recognizing that the work that staff went to get that Green Municipal Fund, that's big, and that's going to help us get into phase two, because I believe that next, you know, we do have some work that will be ongoing until we get an update to council, I believe, before we start phase three. But it's looking at, you know, what's next? What's the design going to look like? And what's that cost going to be? What are those costs going to be? Because we're going to have different options to look at. We can look at the traditional way of building an arts and cultural. We can look at a net zero way of building it, or do we meet in the middle? All that's going to come when we move to phase three. Today, again, we also heard through the update through the economic development strategy. We kept hearing over and over again how critical the cultural aspect is in the city of Kawartha Lakes. So both of these projects in our, you know, our strategic planning are really starting to link together. And I think, you know, for me being the council rep sitting with this group, I want to recognize that the work was done, but I also want to recognize what the community said during this whole phase two, because it was 14 months of total amazing engagement, 12 different forms of tools that we use to actually collect information. And what it came out of it to me is we actually captured what community benefits we need, the traditions that we want to continue, and the experiences that we want to provide. I think us moving to phase three is very trailblazing for the community. I have a bit of a funny, I have to share this because it was like we were blistering through meetings that whole week. My last meeting was this one on a Friday, and my husband says to me, "Where are you going today?" So I told him what I was up to, and he goes, "Well, it's about time. We've needed this in our community for a long time." So that was like the light bulb for me when I have a family member recognizing, who's generally agricultural focused only. I just had to share that little story because I thought it was a personal touch, but I really think that we've done our homework in phase two, and I would really like council to endorse this and we move to the next phase, because this is a good news story. So that's it, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a mover and seconder to receive the presentation and to bring it forward to the next council meeting. All in favor? And that's passed. Moving on to 621, which is the Cultural Center Feasibility Study Findings and the report ED 2024-044, Phase 2 Cultural Center Feasibility Study Findings to be received, and that the Cultural Center Feasibility Study be endorsed, and that staff be directed to proceed to Phase 3 of the Cultural Center project, being site selection and design to develop the Cultural Center located on a municipal water/wastewater service with municipal operating models supported by hybrid governance model as detailed in the task force findings attached as Appendix C, that staff report back to council by the end of Q2 2025 for Phase 3, next steps and implementation plan, and that council thank the members of the Cultural Center Feasibility Task Force for their participation on the task force, being David Morrison, Christina Charpentier, Patrick Murphy, Tim Weisner, Lisa Graves, and Lori Dillon-Schock, and disband the task force, and that these recommendations be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Councillor Richardson, Councillor Warren, any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that's passed. Thank you. Moving on to item 6.3, which is the community signage update presentation. And I think Manager Mustard is back with us. Thank you all, folks, for coming today and for your participation in this task force. It's been really great. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, good morning again. So we are here to talk about community signage, an update. I'm going to give the presentation today, and Sherry Davidson is here as well. Should there be any questions to head that direction? So to get us started, signage across the municipality of the City of Kawartha Lakes are the responsibility of various departments, and you can see a list of the various types of signage that we look after as a municipality. And in 2021, the Economic Development team and the Corporate Assets Division completed an inventory of signage that Economic Development looks after. The intent was to inventory the signage, get it ready to put into the asset management database, attribute a maintenance schedule to each sign, and prepare the groundwork for a coordinated and strategic signage program. So many of the signs that are up here on this board were part of that inventory. Just want to note that out of scope of this discussion, regulatory and warning signs that are identified in the Ontario Traffic Manual. So we're not talking about those signs, we're talking about the other signs. When we went through this process in 2021, what it revealed to us was that there were a lot of signs that were in need of immediate attention, repair, or removal. Oh goodness, sorry guys. What came right up to the top and has been a point of discussion for the last little while has been service club signs in Lindsay, which you can see here needed a lot of attention and actually came down a couple of years ago because they were determined to be in a state of disrepair. So staff have been, similar to these signs, working through a process of addressing immediate needs of signs in lieu of having this coordinated comprehensive signage strategy. The two signs that are coming up next that need to be dealt with immediately right now are the community entrance signs of Kirkfield and Lake Dalrymple. Wanted to share with you today a new design that we're looking at putting in and trialing for these two communities that bring the conformity of what these signs look like more into the corporate brand, recognizing that the individual identity of these communities is really important and recognizing that they are part of the City of Kawartha Lakes. So here is a proposed sign that we worked with communications, Sherry's team, on designing what a new look might be for these signs, and we intend to put these in these two communities. So bringing in the unique character of the community, the name of the community, acknowledging that they're part of the municipality, and also adding a piece on the back as people are driving out of town to say thank you for coming, so that placemaking feel. And here is the sign for Kirkfield. Also, many of you have community notice boards in your community and know that the community members very much appreciate having letters where they can slot in different messaging that's important to the community for a specific point in time. So an example of a sign with the coming events contents on it. So this is where we would like to go. A signage strategy and what a scope of such a strategy would be. The intended inclusion would be to establish criteria for areas that need signs and the locations of those signs, to design the creative and the technical requirements that we would need for the production and installation of such signs, develop a schedule for installing and maintaining these signs, putting together a framework for a municipal and tourism wayfinding program that we do not have right now, but is a constant request of the community and important to the tourism program as well, and also provide a proposed signage program budget. All of this looks very straightforward, very intuitive, but we don't actually have this in place right now, and we need to. Because right now, every time we go to replace a sign, we are starting from scratch. And it's very time consuming, it's slowing down the process, and we're not doing this in a very strategic way at all right now, and that's where we'd like to get to. So Our future goal really is a citywide standard for signs. We want it to be branded, consistent across all types of signs, definitely considering the local uniqueness of communities that are located in the city of Kawartha Lakes. We're really looking to have that maintenance schedule and the budget attached to it. And there is a special project budget request for 2025 that we can start working on this strategy straight away. To give you an idea of what this might look like, on the left is a before. Not all of these, some of these signs have been updated, Little Britain, Coboconk particularly, but it gives you an idea of all of the different look and feel of signs that are all across the city of Kawartha Lakes. And the after, here we've got the township of Springwaters, a version. This is not what we would do, this is somebody else's, but it gives you an idea of how a community that has a lot of different communities, a lot of different signs that they're needing to put up, can use one look and feel, apply it in a multiple different ways, and give you a sense of identity that you are in a particular location, no matter where you are in the municipality. So here we are with next steps. We're going to proceed with the replacement of the Kirkfield and Lake Dalrymple community entrance signs because they need to be addressed. What we want to do is initiate the sign strategy project in 2025, and by the end of next year be able to present you with that draft strategy so that we've got something to work with going forward. And that's where we're up to.
Very efficient. Can I have a motion to receive the presentation? Councillor Warren, Councillor Joyce, questions, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you. Great presentation. Clearly, we don't have a sign strategy right now. So you're coming to us to say this is what we need to do, and I fully support moving in that direction because you're going to create a clear, concise look for everyone. I'm just wondering, you did mention wayfinding. Some of us aren't completely up to date on how that works. Can you just give us a brief description of that, if you don't mind?
Through you, Elmsley, yes. Wayfinding is something that you recognize that you see when you're in a great tourism destination. It's a way for residents and visitors to be able to look and know how to orient themselves in a community. So the definition can vary depending on where you are. In a lot of circumstances, it includes the community entrance signs, it includes the sign to the boat launch, it includes the sign to the theatre, both public and private entities. A lot of times you might recognize the, when you're driving along we were chatting earlier about 400 series highways where you see the blue signs, the TOD signs that direct you to particular places. So we're looking at physical infrastructure program around what's possible here in Kawartha Lakes as a very heavy tourism destination.
Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, not a question, just a comment. Love it. Can we move faster? Thank you.
Would you like me to respond to that? I can. Through the Mayor, thank you. We would love to move on this really quickly. One of the reasons that this project has taken a long time to come is every time we start, there's a lot of innuendos around signs. And so we get partway through down the process and we realize, shoot, this is a very large project for this municipality. We need to dedicate time to it. And so part of putting this forward in 2025 is to be able to dedicate time to it. What we do have, we know needs to happen with this is multiple departments are part of this process. And so there's a lot of engagement across the municipality with our colleagues. And we also have the website project that is a major priority for next year, and I know that the staff that are going to be working on this signage project are also heavily involved in the website project, and we want to schedule projects so that we can deliver them well. So if we can get it here before the end of next year, that would be great. I just want to temper expectations to be realistic.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you. It's really needed. We had a sign coming into Bobcaygeon many years ago, and it just fell into all sorts of problems, so we took it down. So we really don't have any welcome signs going into Bobcaygeon besides the one at the municipal center. So I'm with Councillor Joyce. The faster the better, because we really don't have any signage. What we do have, and through Impact 32 and EAB, we have wayfinding signs that are coming forward. We had paddles all over town, kind of directing people, and we've come to the realization that they were destroyed by people, unfortunately. So we've developed a type of sign that, besides taking a really strong baseball bat too, they're going to survive. So that's great, but the welcome entrance signs are really needed everywhere, ASAP. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor McDonald.
Yeah, thank you, through you. Thank you, Rebecca, for such a great report. I'm so glad to see that this is coming to light here soon. But I also want to mention about wayfinding, because, you know, we spent a lot of money on the revitalization of our downtowns. And when people get downtown, they don't know where to park, they don't know where to go anywhere. So all this is parking and all that part of wayfinding.
Through the Mayor, I will make a note of that and put that into the discussion around wayfinding.
Yeah, signs are very important when people come into town. You know, Councillor Ashmore said you want to get people from the city to come here, but once you get here, you got to know where to go and you got to know where to park. So very important for our downtowns that we have that. So thank you very much for that, and thank you very much for your report.
Thank you. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To Rebecca, thanks for the report. You had mentioned about we're going to be starting with some of the communities like Lake Dalrymple as an example. And by the way, the Omimi sign, it was actually financed through the Legacy Trust Fund when they were put up, which was great. It made a beautiful sign on both sides of the road. I was just warning of the highway, of the village itself. My question is, I call them the main four signs. We have signs coming in, and they say 73,000, which of course we know it's more than 73,000. We're probably about close to 85, 90,000. But we have four major strategic points that just warning whether those signs would be replaced. For example, coming in from Fowler's Corners, coming north from Clarington, coming east from the west on Highway 7 just near Manila, and coming from the north from Halliburton into Norland. Those are four really critical signs that say, welcome to Kawartha Lakes. Like, would those signs be on the priority list to get the people into the municipality first, and then we're going to be concentrating on replacing the community signs? Would that be an option to get those four main signs, greeting signs, come in?
Through the Mayor, Councillor Ashmore, they are important signs, and I think what I would like to see is those signs actually become part of that sign strategy, so that we can come back to you as council and say, here are all the signs that we have. This is how much they're going to take to create, install, maintain these signs. And so we can have a budget attributed to each of them. Currently, those signs are not on the priority list that was identified in 2021, but they are definitely on the radar as signs that need to be updated. Councillor Perry.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thank you for this great report. A lot of photos in that report. That was a lot of work. It's well put together. And thanks. I mean, I think there are three elements to this, really, right? There's the welcoming and location, the wayfinding that's been mentioned, and also the third aspect is how to kind of regulate the appearance of signs on city property. And I know I want to thank Rebecca for coming to Fenelon and looking at our signs a few weeks ago. We were ready with clippers to prune some of the gardening, but didn't have to, as it had already been done. So presumably thanks to Public Works for that, or Parks and Rec. I just want to make sure and ask that in the strategy, will it cover some regulation of ad hoc signs? I find sometimes, I'm sure Councillor on the table will as well, public property is kind of the Wild West. And it can be, you know, pop-up signs that aren't necessarily taken down, that fade, especially welcoming signs to the city. And various communities, I know, various signs pop up, and perhaps having those regulated and standardized would help with the aesthetic and make the existing signs more impactful. Sometimes I think one can be forgiven for kind of becoming blind to a sea of signs that pop up on various parts of city property, including road allowances. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, through you. Just one comment to add to that list as well, recognizing that we do have some outstanding communities that do look after their signs and do all their posts themselves, that we foster those relationships moving forward, so we still have them engaged when we do move that next strategy forward. Thank you.
Did you need to respond to that, or you're good? I was just wondering, I have a question first. You didn't get your answer. Hang on.
Thanks. No, I'm just curious, that regulation piece will be part of the strategy, correct?
Through the Mayor, Councillor Perry, I think we're in the throes of, we need to figure out the details of this scope beyond what we've already outlined, so I will make a note of that. And I will say this work focuses on municipally owned signs on municipal property, and we will talk about that. The private signs that come up on municipal property, but there is also, and just want to draw the distinction between signs that get put on private property would fall outside the scope of this project as well.
Of course, yes.
Yep.
I'm more considering the relation of private signs that pop up kind of on public property, and that will be taken into consideration, I'm hearing.
I will take that back to the team as we build this out and have a response for you one way or the other.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks, Mayor, appreciate that.
Just a question. It was alluded to about our signs on provincial highways. Is it difficult for us to get those changed? Is it difficult for us to get them added? How amenable is the Ministry of Transport to helping us out with signage?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to be jumping in and help a little bit with that one. Any signs or work within the ministry's right-of-way requires permitting from them. So it is a process to go through, make application, and pay an annual fee to have a municipal sign in the ministry right-of-way.
I guess the one I'm looking at is when you come along the 401 from the east to the west, it says Lindsay. When you see the sign for 115, it says Lindsay and Peterborough. It doesn't say City of Kawartha Lakes, and I'm wondering, should that get updated? Should that get changed? Can it be? And how do we go about that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to you, Mr. Mayor, the signs can be changed, absolutely. It would require application coordination with the MTO. Probably that hasn't happened just because nobody's initiated those conversations with the MTO. I don't believe those particular wayfinding signs, like the community directional signs on the highway, are like a fee for service. Like, we don't pay to have those signs there, but those are conversations we can start with the MTO.
Thank you. Councillor Warren.
Through you, so just on Councillor Perry's issue, will bylaw be involved in any of this going forward? Like the whole sign bylaw, or is it just strictly for our signage?
Through the Mayor, this project, we're going to scope it so that it's our municipal signs that's on our municipal property. When we get to signs that are outside, they're on private property, that's a different conversation. Yep. And so will bylaw be part of this process? I'm going to say likely yes, they will be engaged in this process, but this is really about developing a a standard and getting us ready for implementing and being able to maintain it well. When bylaw often gets involved is a little bit later down the line when someone else has put their sign on ours. So we will have conversations about that, but the focus of this is really to develop that standard.
It's just the point of all the signs just going up on public land. That's what I was talking about. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, maybe just through you for clarification too, our current sign bylaw that is governed or enforced by both our building and municipal law does cover both private and public land. So there are restrictions already in our base bylaw for in public road allowances. So my understanding is this project will be very focused on what signs we are managing, maintaining throughout. The exercise of looking at the sign bylaw independently would be where we would look at regulating and prohibiting and setting sort of standards and rules for any signage in the public right-of-way and or private right-of-ways as well.
Okay. Councillor Ashmore.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question, a final question to Rebecca. There's sort of like no turning back when we decide on what our slogan is. If you see behind the mayor and the CAO, we have Kawartha Lakes minus the jump in. It's a beautiful sign. Minus the jump in. Now, nothing against jump in, the slogan itself, which is a catchy slogan, but have you done research on, for example, in Brock, you see it says breathe it in, which is kind of a catchy slogan too, but do you find that when you have a slogan or you have a couple of words underneath the municipality's name, it's more effective for people to see that? Or like, do you think it's a selling point or the extra two words? Because, we're going to be making a decision to go all in on this and including the words jump in. Like, just wondering if that was something that you've done research and you found that it certainly sells the municipality as far as branding.
Through the mayor, no, I haven't specifically done the research, and particularly on our two words, but what we will be doing through this project is implementing the brand standards that we do have. I'd defer to Sherry for further details on the branding.
Sure, thank you. And through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, if I could just add, part of the scoping of this project will be having third-party look at what is effective, what do other municipalities do over a 10, 20-year period, and what is the best way to leverage our branding and to leverage this vast geography that we have with 16 or more communities with 2 entrance points each, plus. We have a huge opportunity. And alongside that, we're also revisiting the tourism branding this year. So the timing is great to look at all of that together and decide on a plan going forward.
Councillor Perry.
Thanks, Mayor. And I was just curious, you'd mentioned the revision project or potentially where private signs are regulated within the existing sign bylaw. Is there a review scheduled, or is that coming up to be looked at in the near future? Thank you.
Sorry, I'll answer then, sort of through you. We don't have anything scheduled sort of to do an update. One was done, I'm going to guess, about 2 years ago, but we'll certainly take back the comments and sort of see where there's a touch point with this term of council on that bylaw.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion to receive and forward the presentation to the next regular council meeting. All in favor? And that's passed. We'll go to 631, which is community signage update, the report ED 2024-042, community signage update be received for information, and that this recommendation be brought forward to council for consideration at the next regular council meeting. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Deputy Mayor McDonald, Councillor Richardson. Sorry, Councillor Yo, I'll get you next time. All in favor? And that's passed. So we've been very efficient this morning and right on time. I understand that there's lunch in the Weldon room, and we need to be back here by 1 o'clock for that public meeting at 1 o'clock. Okay? Thank you.